So this is an introduction to the March 2016 topic on Pathwork Lecture 216, which is the connection between the incarnatory process and the life task. So again, I divided the lecture up into 4 sections to make it bite-sized. And the first section is that I delineated is the role of the mind, the ego, and the real self. The second is the human life task, as opposed to the incarnatory process, and then the connection between the two. So, mind, ego, and real self, they are not the same thing. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting down in front of a computer and you are interacting with the computer. You depend on it. You gain information, you give information. But you and the computer are not the same thing. The ego part of us is not identical to the mind. The mind may be more of a tool. It's a fabulous tool. It's a tool. The ego, however, is the part of us that is motivated, that makes decisions, that makes choices, and is so intimately connected with the tool that you may not be able to see daylight between the two. So it's important to realize the distinction between the two. Now, mind, ego, and real self. Real self is harder to define. Every discipline winds up with some nomenclature to try to define a term that isn't used in common parlance. So what Pathwork uses the term real self to mean is the part of you that is spiritually connected. It is the part of you that has knowing. So the ego decides when to eat breakfast and what to eat for breakfast, but there's a deeper part of us that decides why living is worth living at all, that in effect carries a knowing about the life task, that has a clue about what we're here for. And what happens during life is that as that part of us expands, as last month we studied movement, consciousness, and experience, as those 3 elements grow in our lives, and we become more wise and more aware and have more experience, it is very common for a knowing to come forward. Now, sometimes the knowing is in alignment with what's going on in our lives, and sometimes it is contrary to what's going on. If it's contrary, we may make a change. If it's in alignment, we may go faster. So mind, ego, and real self not being the same thing. The second element is the human life task. Now, this is hard. And it is hard because the joke is a goldfish. Does a goldfish know it's a goldfish? Does a goldfish understand water? Does it understand the bowl? Does it know what's in the outside world? As a human being, we can't fully know the spirit plane because we are in the human body. We are working with the human mind. And if there is access to all knowing, humans don't have it. We are living within some limitations. The Pathwork lectures and other theologies and disciplines propose that there's a purpose to that. There's a reason why we're human beings. There's a reason why we are not all knowing, and a reason why we are flawed. Why, as a package, we have some things that are lacking that may not be true in our wider spirit, but are true in our human manifestation. So, as humans, we may have a life task. Now, that inner knowing, that spiritual life task, may not be apparent to the ego. The ego may have decided my best shot at being respected and wealthy and happy would be as doing this task. And it's a practical, interactive decision made for the ego's looking at reality. It's looking at life and society and says this makes perfect sense. However, the inner knowing may not have been developed enough at the time to come forward and say yes and. That answers some elements of what we came here to learn, but not all of them. So the task of the real self doesn't appear instantaneously. It doesn't magically appear when you're 6 months old or 6 years old or 16 or 26 or 36 or 36. There's a developmental process. And you may need a certain amount of life experience in order to take a further step into your own divine knowing to manifest what you've come here to learn. Now, the Pathwork talks about reincarnation. Please don't be put off by this. If you don't believe in reincarnation, just translate it into one incarnation. But it's the same dynamic. If you're here for an incarnation, you're here to learn something. Now, I find that it is useful when you're talking about this incarnatory process to shake things up like you had a snow globe. You got to shake things up, turn it upside down, turn it right side up, because it may not be apparent from the way things are at first glance. In the human view of what's going on, let's say that you are living a life of great sadness, tremendous sadness. From a spiritual perspective, the truth may be that you are, and I'm using human terms because it's all I've got, you may be a very happy person. And yet you never understood sadness. You never understood the feelings of loss. You didn't have a sense of loss, so you didn't understand the feelings of loss. You may have come here to live an entire life full of sadness in order to add to your spiritual experience and be able to open your heart to the variety of tasks, divine tasks, spiritual tasks, and the variety of beings. Another example would be that if you are in enormous poverty during this life, it is possible that on a spiritual level you have great wealth, and you never understood how someone could be fooled about how a spirit could not be worthy or worthwhile. And by living a life of poverty, you may be able to realize truths that were not apparent to you in your larger being. And I mention these because there's a tendency to think that because we've got life experiences that are unpleasant or disharmonious, that we're being punished. But the paradox is perhaps we're not being punished. Perhaps this is an opportunity for us to see parts of life that we don't or haven't had exposure to. The importance with the human life task is not to see it as bad, good, rich, poor, I have a relationship, I don't have a relationship, but to seek a knowing within you about what this could be about. Now, that's the human life task. The human life task is not separate from the cosmic or spiritual. It's just manifested during the human lifetime. And the incarnatory process begins to some extent at death. So I wrote a little chart, and it had birth, death, and birth, death. And then in between death and birth is the incarnatory process. The incarnatory process is about figuring out what you didn't learn during that incarnation and devising a way for you to learn more, or to fill out more knowledge, or to go in a different direction during a subsequent incarnation. Again, if you do not believe in reincarnation, that's fine. The terms, you can adjust the terms to fit. But just like in this lifetime, we go from event to event and we learn different things at different times of our life. If you think of reincarnation in that way, surely after we die, there is more to learn, more to experience. So whether it is about coming back into human life or continuing on with masters and teachers, the principle is still the same. So there was an incarnatory process before we came in, and then we have the human life task to accomplish. And then there will be a reevaluation of our human life task and a decision about where to go next. So hopefully that will make some sense of the lecture. Connection between the incarnatory process and the life task. Thanks for listening.